Hello everyone, welcome to Earth Archives. There have been many natural disasters in human history, but the most destructive one should be earthquakes. Especially recently, earthquakes have occurred frequently around the world. Today we will tell the stories of the 10 largest earthquakes. Please subscribe to the show before it starts, and share it with your friends if possible. Earthquakes, with their raw and unrelenting power, have the ability to reshape landscapes, devastate entire cities, and claim countless lives in a matter of moments. These unpredictable tremors, born from the deep, unseen forces beneath the Earth's crust, have been part of our planet's history for eons. They are not just geological phenomena, they are moments that forever alter the course of human existence. When the ground beneath our feet begins to tremble, we are reminded of the immense forces that govern our world, forces that can neither be anticipated nor controlled. Across the centuries, there have been tremors so catastrophic that their aftershocks continue to echo in the minds of those who lived through them. These seismic events, while often unpredictable, leave behind stories of tragedy, resilience, and survival. Some have been so powerful that they have rewritten the histories of entire regions. Today, we delve into the 10 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded, moments in time when the Earth unleashed its fury, challenging humanity's strength and ingenuity. The 2012 Indian Ocean earthquakes. On April 11, 2012, at 15:38 local time, the Indian Ocean was rocked by an undersea earthquake of magnitude 8.6, located near the Indonesian city of Aceh. This massive seismic event, though distant from heavily populated areas, raised immediate concerns about the potential for a devastating tsunami, prompting authorities to issue a tsunami warning. However, the warning was soon lifted as the expected destructive waves never materialized. This earthquake was particularly remarkable for its rarity. It was an intraplate earthquake, meaning it occurred not along the usual tectonic plate boundaries, but within a single plate itself. Additionally, it was the largest strike-slip earthquake ever recorded. Unlike other types of earthquakes, which involve plates moving towards or away from each other, a strike-slip earthquake occurs when two plates slide past one another horizontally. This unique characteristic made the 2012 earthquake stand out in the world of seismology. Despite the immense power of the earthquake, the location in the relatively remote region of the Indian Ocean meant that there was little immediate impact on human settlements. Tsunamis did occur, but they were far less severe than initially feared. Recorded waves ranged from a mere 10 centimeters, 3.9 inches, to a more substantial 0.8 meters, 31.4 inches, nowhere near the catastrophic heights typically associated with such massive quakes. The lack of widespread destruction was a fortunate outcome, given the size and strength of the earthquake. Unfortunately, the earthquake was not without its casualties. While the event did not directly cause widespread structural damage, the panic it induced led to the deaths of at least 10 people, with another 12 reported injured. Most of these injuries and fatalities were due to panic-induced accidents and heart attacks, as people rushed to evacuate or feared the worst. The psychological impact of the tremor was significant, even in areas not directly hit by the quake. Assam-Tibet earthquake, 1950. On August 15, 1950, a powerful earthquake struck the region along the Xizang, Tibet, India border, with its epicenter located near the town of Rima in Tibet. This devastating seismic event wreaked havoc across the region, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. Buildings collapsed, infrastructure was severely damaged, and the death toll was estimated to be between 1,500 and 3,000 people, though the exact number remains uncertain due to the remote nature of the affected area. In the wake of the earthquake, the landscape itself was transformed. Large landslides, triggered by the shaking ground, blocked the flow of the Subansiri River, creating a natural dam in the heart of the mountainous region. For 8 days, this makeshift dam held the river back, but the forces of nature are often impossible to contain. Eventually, The dam broke, releasing a massive torrent of water in the form of a 7-meter-high, 23-foot wave that surged downriver, inundating several villages in its path. This secondary disaster claimed the lives of 536 more people, as homes and farmlands were swept away by the powerful floodwaters. The earthquake's impact was not confined to just the immediate destruction of buildings and loss of life. The catastrophe left around 5 million people homeless, as entire villages were either destroyed or rendered uninhabitable by the tremors and subsequent flooding. These survivors were left to face the daunting challenge of rebuilding their lives amidst the wreckage, with little aid and few resources available in the remote region. The 1950 Xizang, India border earthquake remains one of the most devastating seismic events in the region's history, leaving behind a legacy of destruction, displacement, and loss. The event also highlighted the unpredictable and complex nature of natural disasters, where an earthquake can trigger cascading effects like landslides and flooding that compound the tragedy. The scars left by the earthquake were felt for years, as the affected communities worked tirelessly to recover from the immense destruction and rebuild their homes and lives. Rat Island's earthquake, 1965. On February 4, 1965, a massive earthquake shook the earth beneath the Rat Islands in Alaska, sending ripples through the Pacific Ocean and across the western United States. With a magnitude of 8.7, the earthquake became one of the strongest ever recorded, leaving a lasting impact on the region despite its remote location. The earthquake was caused by the subduction of the Pacific Plate beneath the North American Plate, a tectonic process that results in significant movement along the boundary between the two plates. As the Pacific Plate was forced downward, immense pressure was released in the form of seismic energy, causing the Earth to shake violently. The tremors were felt across a wide area, but it was the subsequent tsunami that caused the most damage and concern. Triggered by the earthquake, the tsunami waves quickly radiated outwards, striking coastal communities in Alaska, Hawaii, and California. In Alaska, where the earthquake originated, several villages experienced the destructive effects of the waves. In Hawaii and California, the tsunami created flooding and damage, but thanks to early warning systems and the relatively low population density of the affected areas, the impact was somewhat mitigated. Still, the tsunami left behind a trail of destruction, and there were reports of property damage along the Pacific coast, with communities scrambling to assess and recover from the damage. In the years following the earthquake, authorities and scientific communities took a closer look at the Rat Islands region and its potential for future seismic activity. The event played a significant role in improving understanding of the seismic risks in the Pacific Ring of Fire and led to more comprehensive efforts to monitor and mitigate the impacts of similar events in the future. While the loss of life was relatively small, the earthquake's power and the subsequent tsunami made it clear that even the most remote areas are not immune to nature's destructive force. Ecuador-Colombia earthquake, 1906. On January 31, 1906, the earth trembled violently along the border between Ecuador and Colombia in one of the most devastating earthquakes ever recorded. With a magnitude of 8.8, the Ecuador-Colombia earthquake unleashed immense power, causing widespread destruction that left a profound mark on the region and on the history of seismic events. The earthquake occurred at the boundary where the South American Plate collides with the Nazca Plate, a tectonic meeting point that has been responsible for some of the most powerful earthquakes in history. As the plates shifted and ground movements surged, the energy released was enough to crack the earth open, triggering massive tremors and structural chaos. Buildings crumbled, roads disintegrated, and mountainsides were scoured by violent landslides. The aftermath was one of devastation. Entire towns and villages were reduced to rubble, and infrastructure, already fragile in many of these regions, was destroyed. Communications and transportation were severely disrupted as landslides blocked essential roads and cut off many areas from help. With homes collapsed, people were left injured, trapped, or displaced. The death toll from the disaster is estimated to be around 1,000, but the true number of casualties may have been higher as many remote villages were difficult to access. Mall, Chile, earthquake, 2010. On the early morning of Saturday, February 27, 2010, the ground trembled violently off the coast of central Chile, setting in motion one of the most powerful earthquakes in the region's history. At exactly 3:34 local time, 6:34 Coordinated Universal Time, the 8.8 magnitude Mall earthquake, also known as the 2010 Chile earthquake, struck, its epicenter located just 3 kilometers (1.9 miles) off the coast of the Baluhué commune in the Mall region. The quake, which lasted a terrifying 3 minutes, unleashed an immense force that shook the earth from deep beneath the ocean. Its energy was so powerful that the entire length of Chile's coast was affected, with the shaking felt as far as 1,000 kilometers (620 miles) away from the epicenter. Buildings, bridges, and roads crumbled under the seismic waves, and the country's infrastructure was left in ruins. The earthquake triggered a massive tsunami that slammed into several coastal towns along the south-central Chilean coastline. The wave was particularly destructive in areas such as Constitución, Dicarto, and other communities near the epicenter, where the surge of water washed away homes, vehicles, and entire neighborhoods. Talcahuano, a major port city, also bore the brunt of the tsunami's wrath, with its vital port facilities suffering heavy damage. The flooding caused by the tsunami compounded the destruction from the earthquake itself, submerging streets and making rescue operations even more difficult. In addition to the destruction caused by the shaking and the tsunami, the earthquake led to widespread infrastructure failures. Power lines were downed, communication networks were severed, and emergency services struggled to reach affected areas. Many cities, including the capital, Santiago, experienced significant damage, with buildings collapsing, leaving thousands trapped under the rubble. In the chaos that followed, panic swept through the nation as residents tried to flee from aftershocks and the uncertainty of further seismic activity. The final toll of the disaster was devastating. By January 2011, authorities confirmed that 525 people had lost their lives, with another 25 reported as missing. The destruction left more than 200,000 homes damaged or destroyed, leaving entire communities homeless. The cost of the damage was estimated at around $30 billion, making the 2010 Chile earthquake one of the most expensive natural disasters in the country's history. Kamchatka, Russia earthquake, 1952. On November 4, 1952, a seismic event of catastrophic proportions struck the Pacific Ocean, sending shockwaves across multiple continents and triggering a destructive tsunami. At exactly 16:58 Greenwich Mean Time, 4:58 local time, the earthquake's epicenter was located off the coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula, in the far east of Russia. The tremor, with a magnitude that would be classified as one of the most powerful earthquakes in the region's history, unleashed a Pacific-wide tsunami that would go on to leave lasting scars across the Pacific Rim. The earthquake's immediate impact was felt with devastating force across the Kamchatka Peninsula and the Kuril Islands, where entire communities were swept away by the tremendous power of the tsunami. Waves, as high as 15 meters, 50 feet, crashed against the coastlines, obliterating everything in their path. Buildings, homes, and infrastructure were destroyed, while the population was left in the midst of chaos and destruction. The death toll was staggering, with estimates ranging between 10,000 to 15,000 lives lost in the region alone. The tsunami, however, did not restrict its devastation to just the shores of the Russian Far East. As the seismic energy traveled across the Pacific Ocean, it spawned waves that crossed vast stretches of ocean. These waves reached distant shores, including the Hawaiian Islands, where significant damage occurred. The tsunami wreaked havoc on coastal towns and harbors, but fortunately, no human lives were reported lost in Hawaii. Still, the extent of the damage served as a harsh reminder of the sheer power of these natural events. The waves continued their journey across the Pacific, causing further disturbance in distant regions. Peru, Chile, and New Zealand also experienced the tsunami's waves, although the impact in these countries was less severe. In Alaska, the Aleutian Islands and the coastal areas of California observed tsunami waves that were smaller in comparison, but still significant, reaching heights of up to 1.4 meters, 4.6 feet. Tohoku earthquake, 2011. On the afternoon of March 11, 2011, a catastrophic natural disaster unfolded off the coast of Japan. At precisely 14:46 local time, 5:46 Coordinated Universal Time, a massive undersea megathrust earthquake struck with immense force, sending tremors throughout the region and generating a devastating tsunami that would go down in history as one of the deadliest seismic events ever recorded. The earthquake, with a magnitude of 9.1, released an enormous amount of energy, making it the most powerful earthquake to hit Japan and one of the largest ever to have been measured worldwide. The seismic waves from the earthquake triggered a towering tsunami that raced toward the Japanese coast. As the waves surged inland, they reached heights of up to 40.5 meters, 133 feet, taller than most buildings, and traveled as far as 6 miles, 10 kilometers, inland. The sheer force of the tsunami caused widespread and severe structural damage, particularly in the northeastern regions of Japan. Cities, towns, and villages along the Pacific coast were devastated. Airports, roads, and railways were obliterated, rendering transportation inoperable for millions of people. Entire neighborhoods vanished as over 127,000 buildings were completely destroyed, while more than 270,000 structures suffered severe damage, with nearly 750,000 buildings sustaining partial damage. In addition to the vast physical destruction, the tsunami triggered a series of horrific secondary disasters, the most notable of which was the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant catastrophe. The plant, located on the Pacific coast, was severely affected by the earthquake and subsequent tsunami. The resulting damage caused a massive failure in its cooling systems, leading to the meltdown of 3 reactors at the plant. The nuclear crisis was catastrophic, with radiation leaking into the environment and prompting the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of people from the surrounding areas. The Fukushima disaster would later be classified as a Level 7 nuclear accident, the highest level of severity on the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale, INES, marking it as one of the worst nuclear accidents in history. The human toll of the disaster was staggering. By March 10, 2015, 4 years after the event, the official figures reported by the Japanese government confirmed 15,894 deaths, with 6,152 people injured and 2,562 still missing. The loss of life was devastating, and the impact of the disaster was felt not only in Japan but around the world. Communities had to rebuild from the ground up, with entire cities and towns completely wiped off the map, and the psychological trauma endured by survivors would last for years. Sumatra earthquake, 2004, one of the most catastrophic and deadliest natural disasters in modern history, the 2004 Sumatra earthquake, or the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, struck with unimaginable force on December 26, 2004. The earthquake occurred at 0 hours 58 minutes and 53 seconds Coordinated Universal Time, with its epicenter located off the west coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. What followed was not only one of the most powerful seismic events ever recorded, but also a tragedy of such scale that its effects rippled across the globe. This colossal earthquake ruptured the greatest fault length ever observed, spanning an astonishing 1,500 kilometers, 900 miles. The seismic tremors were so intense that they caused the entire planet to vibrate by as much as 1 centimeter, 0.4 inches, shaking the Earth to its core. The faulting duration, lasting between 8.3 and 10 minutes, was the longest ever recorded, giving an eerie sense of the immense power contained within the Earth's crust. The earthquake's total energy release was staggering, estimated at 4.0 times 10 to the 22 joules, 4.0 times 10 to the 29 ergs, or roughly 9,600 gigatons of TNT. This energy release was about 550 million times the power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Although the vast majority of this energy was released underground, the energy that reached the Earth's surface was still immense, equivalent to 26 megatons of TNT, about 1,500 times more than the Hiroshima bomb, though still far less than the explosive yield of Tsar Bomba, the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated. While the earthquake itself was a staggering force, its most devastating impact came in the form of the tsunami it triggered. Waves as high as 30 meters, 100 feet, surged across the Indian Ocean, inundating coastal areas from Indonesia to Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, the Maldives, and as far as East Africa. The waves struck with terrifying speed, often with no warning, sweeping entire communities into the ocean, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The tsunami was so vast in its reach that it earned several names: the 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami, South Asian Tsunami, Indonesian Tsunami, and even the Christmas Tsunami, due to the time of year when it struck, and the Boxing Day Tsunami, because it hit on the holiday of Boxing Day in many countries. The death toll from this catastrophe was staggering. Between 230,000 and 280,000 people lost their lives, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. Entire villages and towns were wiped off the map, and millions more were displaced, left to face the long and difficult process of rebuilding their lives in the aftermath. The scale of the disaster was unparalleled. Homes, businesses, schools, hospitals, and even entire ecosystems were destroyed. The human cost was overwhelming, and the global community was left reeling from the shock of such unprecedented destruction. Great Alaska Earthquake, 1964. The 1964 Great Alaska Earthquake, also known as the Good Friday Earthquake, is etched into the annals of history as one of the most powerful seismic events ever recorded. Striking at 5:36 p.m. local time, 3:36 Coordinated Universal Time, on Friday, March 27, 1964, in the Prince William Sound region of Alaska, the earthquake lasted a staggering 4.5 minutes. With a magnitude of 9.2, it remains the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in the United States, and one of the most intense in the world. The earthquake's impact was felt far beyond Alaska's remote wilderness. It set off a chain reaction of devastating natural events. The tremors triggered a massive tsunami, with waves that reached heights of up to 27 feet, 8.2 meters. The village of Chenaga, located on the shores of the Gulf of Alaska, was decimated by the surge. Of the 68 residents who called Chenaga home, 23 tragically lost their lives. The survivors of this tight-knit community managed to outrun the deadly wave by fleeing to higher ground, but the damage was catastrophic. Meanwhile, the earthquake caused a massive underwater landslide, further compounding the destruction in the surrounding areas. The chaos wasn't confined to Alaska alone. The earthquake's seismic energy traveled across the globe, triggering tsunami waves that reached distant shores. In Port Valdez, a key city and harbor on the southern coast of Alaska, the massive waves caused extensive damage. The city's harbor and docks were destroyed, and 30 lives were claimed by the disaster. The death toll from this monumental disaster stands at 139, a number that includes 15 people who perished from the direct impact of the earthquake, 106 who died from the tsunami in Alaska, 5 who were killed in Oregon, and 13 more victims from the waves that struck California. In total, the destruction stretched along the Pacific coast, from Alaska down to the U.S. West Coast, as the tsunami swept across the ocean, leaving a wake of destruction in its path. Valdivia Earthquake, 1960. The Great Chilean Earthquake, also known as the 1960 Valdivia Earthquake, holds the distinction of being the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in human history. Striking on May 22, 1960, At approximately 3:11 p.m. local time, 1911 Greenwich Mean Time, this colossal seismic event occurred about 100 miles (160 kilometers) off the coast of Chile, just off the city of Valdivia. The earthquake unleashed an unimaginable magnitude of energy, lasting a full 10 minutes, an eternity in the realm of seismic events, and profoundly reshaped the region and the world. The earthquake's epicenter, located beneath the Pacific Ocean, caused the ocean floor to move so dramatically that it set off one of the largest tsunamis in recorded history. Waves as high as 25 meters (82 feet) surged toward the Chilean coast, unleashing devastation on the shoreline. Coastal cities and towns along the southern and central regions of Chile were hit with brutal force, and entire communities were decimated. The tremors from the earthquake were so intense that they were felt across a vast region, from Argentina to Ecuador, and even as far as the western United States. But the impact of this disaster did not end at the coast. The seismic energy of the earthquake spread across the Pacific Ocean in the form of a powerful tsunami, which traveled at great speed, causing significant destruction thousands of miles away. The tsunami waves that radiated outward from the epicenter battered the coastlines of distant lands, reaching Hilo, Hawaii, where waves as high as 10.7 meters (35 feet) struck the islands with ferocious force. The tsunami waves continued to travel, causing damage and loss of life in places as distant as Japan and the Philippines. Remarkably, these waves were recorded even as far as 10,000 kilometers (6,200 miles) from the earthquake's epicenter. The human toll was staggering. Thousands of lives were lost, with estimates ranging from 1,000 to 6,000 dead, and many more injured or displaced. The city of Valdivia, located near the epicenter, was particularly hard hit, as were other nearby coastal towns like Concepcion and Puerto Saavedra. Entire neighborhoods and buildings were reduced to rubble, and the nation faced a monumental recovery effort.